bikers walking right up Fifth Avenue.
Swinging through the heart of New York City, Peter Parker isn't just battling supervillains. He's fighting to keep his life from unraveling. Marvel's Spider-Man isn't just about epic action. It's a story of sacrifice, heartbreak, and what it truly means to be a hero. From iconic showdowns with the Sinister Six to impossible choices that define his legacy, this game takes us on a journey that's as emotional as it is exhilarating. And it's not just Peter's story. This is about the people who shape him, the city he loves, and the web of secrets threatening to tear it all apart. Get ready as we break down the full story, from the gripping battles to the unforgettable moments. This is Marvel's Spider-Man, the story behind the mask.
Who can make the hardest decisions?
Let's dive in. The story begins with Peter Parker fast asleep in his cozy but cluttered apartment. His phone buzzes loudly, pulling him from his dreams.
All units, level 4 mobilization. Location, Fisk Tower.
The camera glides across the room, revealing little pieces of Peter's life. Photos with Aunt May, Uncle Ben, Mary Jane, and Harry Osborn. Newspapers from the Daily Bugle. Sketches of his Spider-Man suit upgrades. And a pile of overdue bills showing he's behind on rent. Suddenly, a police dispatch crackles through the phone, and Peter springs into action.
All units, level 4 mobilization. Location, Fisk Tower.
Fisk?
He suits up in his iconic red and blue Spider-Man outfit and leaps out the window, swinging into the city as the sun rises over New York. As Spider-Man swings through the bustling streets, Yuri Watanabe, a police captain, calls him over the comms. Her team is at Fisk Tower, preparing a raid, but she needs Spider-Man's help at Times Square. Before he can respond, his other job as Peter Parker interrupts.
Parker, where are you? We must run through the demonstration at least once before the grant committee arrives.
Yes. Sorry.
His boss, Doctor Otto Octavius, needs him for a last-minute demonstration. Torn between his responsibilities, Peter prioritizes the urgent police call. At Times Square, chaos erupts. Police officers take cover behind their cars as Fisk's armed men fire relentlessly. A tanker truck barrels onto the scene, exploding in a fiery blast. Just as it seems, the thugs have the upper hand. Spider-Man swoops in, disarming them with precision.
Be there soon. Can't wait to see Willie's face when you slap Kitty.
After ensuring the officers are safe, he's alerted to more trouble at Fisk Tower. Arriving at the tower, Spider-Man joins Yuri, who's pinned down by heavy gunfire. Swinging into action, he disables Fisk's men outside, then infiltrates the building. Inside, Spider-Man faces waves of thugs, navigating the chaos as Yuri updates him about a server room where critical data is being erased. On the way, Aunt May calls, but Peter quickly reassures her he's fine before diving back into the fight. In the server room, Spider-Man halts the data purge, only to be confronted by Fisk himself. After taunting Spider-Man, Fisk sends more henchmen, but Spider-Man overcomes them. The confrontation escalates as Spider-Man battles Fisk, dodging punches and turrets until he finally webs up the Kingpin, leaving him for the police. With Kingpin arrested, Peter is reminded of his day job. At Octavius Industries, he helps Otto recover from a near disaster during their demonstration for the grant committee. Despite Peter's efforts, the committee leaves unimpressed. Later, Peter repairs a damaged prosthetic arm while Otto steps out for dinner. Returning to his Spider-Man duties, Peter receives a call from Yuri about damaged surveillance towers. While fixing the towers, Spider-Man humorously adopts the persona of Spider Cop, narrating his actions in a gruff voice, much to Yuri's annoyance. Along the way, he prevents a break-in, rescues a hostage, and even discovers an old backpack from his high school days, filled with memories. Back at the lab, Peter works on repairing his suit when Otto unexpectedly returns. To Peter's relief, Otto assumes Peter designed Spider-Man's tech and praises his altruism. Inspired by Otto's notes, Peter crafts a sleek new advanced suit, ready for whatever challenges come next. Peter's next stop is FEAST, a shelter run by Martin Lee, where Aunt May volunteers. On his way, his landlord warns him about overdue rent. At the shelter, Peter distracts Aunt May while the staff surprises her with a thank you cake. Afterward, Martin Lee suggests May visit City Hall to discuss her community work. As Peter leaves, he receives a new lead from Yuri, signaling the beginning of his next adventure. Spider-Man was at the FEAST shelter when he got a call from Yuri Watanabe. A silent alarm had gone off at Wilson Fisk's estate, and she needed him to check it out. Peter quickly swung into action. On his way, Aunt May called to thank him for his kind words earlier, which made her day. At the estate, Spider-Man sneaked in through a rooftop vent. Inside, he spotted a group of masked thugs holding a woman hostage. He called Yuri to let her know about the heist and started taking out the thugs quietly, one by one, to avoid endangering the hostage. While inspecting a security camera, he let his guard down, and a thug tried to ambush him. But Mary Jane Watson appeared out of nowhere and knocked the thug out cold. MJ quickly explained how she got there. 15 minutes earlier, she had posed as a reporter to gain access to Fisk's art collection. She tricked Rose Roseman, Fisk's associate, into letting her in by faking a phone call about a scheduling mix-up. As MJ explored, she took photos of Fisk's art and asked Roseman probing questions about shady art deals and money laundering. This irritated Roseman, who stepped out to take a call, giving MJ a chance to snoop around. MJ discovered a secret file about Norman Osborn and something called Devil's Breath. Before she could leave, the thugs arrived, targeting the file. Spider-Man listened to her story, then told her to hide as he took out more thugs. But MJ was caught while trying to escape, forcing Spider-Man to swoop in and save her and Roseman. The thugs wielded strange, energy-powered weapons, which Spider-Man noted as odd. After the fight, Roseman confronted MJ for lying about her credentials. MJ revealed she worked for the Daily Bugle and tried asking more questions, but Roseman brushed her off. Later, Peter texted MJ, asking her to meet for dinner. She hesitated, but agreed. At Mick's diner, Peter and MJ caught up. MJ joked about likely facing her legal team after her stunt, while Peter talked about his work with Dr. Otto Octavius and how it could save lives. The conversation got awkward when their breakup came up, but before they could unpack it, sirens blared, and Peter had to leave. As he swung away, the diner's cook, Stan Lee, called them his favorites. Yuri called Spider-Man again. Herman Schultz, the Shocker, had broken parole and was on the loose. On the way to stop him, Peter got a call from Dr. Octavius, who was worried about Spider-Man's tech being traced back to their lab. Peter reassured him, and Otto praised Spider-Man for staying true to his mission, despite critics like J. Jonah Jameson. Spider-Man caught up to Shocker outside a bank, leading to a wild chase through the city. During the pursuit, Spider-Man grilled Shocker about why he was stealing money, suspecting he was working for someone bigger. Shocker refused to talk, clearly scared of whoever was pulling the strings. Spider-Man eventually caught him and handed him over to the police. MJ called Peter, asking him to learn more about a strange mask they found at Fisk's estate. Peter visited Martin Lee at the FEAST shelter, who recognized the symbol on the mask. It belonged to a group called the Demons, and Lee warned Peter that they were dangerous. He also urged Peter to steer MJ away from investigating further, but MJ wouldn't let it go. Meanwhile, Peter's day got worse when Norman Osborn shut down Otto Octavius' lab, citing safety violations. Otto accused Osborn of abusing his power, hinting at a long-standing feud between them. With no funding left, Otto told Peter he couldn't afford to keep him on staff. Peter left, frustrated, and thought about asking Harry Osborn for help. Instead, he remembered Harry's research stations around the city and decided to use them to help the public, honoring Harry's late mother's vision. After helping at one of Harry's stations, Spider-Man got another call from Yuri. Shocker had escaped police custody thanks to a corrupt guard, and was robbing another bank. As Spider-Man raced to stop him, MJ called to share her findings. The inner demons were rising to fill the power vacuum left by Fisk's arrest. Spider-Man confronted Shocker at the bank, leading to an intense battle. During the fight, Shocker admitted he was working for the inner demons under duress. His fear of them was clear, confirming how dangerous they were. After defeating Shocker, Spider-Man called Yuri to report what he'd learned. Shocker was sent to the raft, but Spider-Man couldn't shake the feeling that the inner demons were just the tip of the iceberg. Yuriko Watanabe called Spider-Man with troubling news. The inner demons were targeting Wilson Fisk's properties. Spider-Man suggested they get ahead of the attacks, prompting Yuri to direct him to a shipyard under high surveillance. To assist, she sent Officer Jefferson Davis, a veteran investigator of Fisk's operations. When Spider-Man arrived, Fisk's snipers were guarding the equipment. He swiftly neutralized them before meeting Davis. With a warrant in hand, Davis was ready to go in, but Spider-Man opted for a stealthier approach. He sneaked in through a back entrance, unlocking the door for Davis from the inside. Davis handed Spider-Man a stun gun, which Peter quickly modified into an electric web to power a junction box. Inside the warehouse, the two uncovered a hidden passage leading to a vault. Within the vault, signs of a smash and grab revealed what the demons had stolen. Lethal weapons like assault rifles and RPGs, leaving behind only non-lethal gear. One of the demons' vans escaped, but Spider-Man chased down the other. After a chaotic pursuit, he stopped the van from colliding with a subway train, saving countless lives. When the final demon tried to attack, Davis intervened, taking him down but getting injured in the process. As paramedics arrived, Mary Jane Watson persuaded Davis to share his story. She joined him in the ambulance, determined to publish the truth. Peter returned home to find an eviction notice on his door. With no choice but to track down his belongings, he called sanitation to locate the dumpster holding his things. His priority was a USB drive containing his Spider-Man schematics. At the dump site, Peter encountered thugs harassing a worker. After saving him, the worker allowed Peter to sift through the trash until he recovered the USB. With the schematics, Peter crafted a new gadget, the web bomb, testing it in his next fight. That night, Peter considered asking MJ for a place to stay, but changed his mind after seeing her article about Jefferson Davis go live. He decided not to interrupt her work. Spider-Man received a taunting call from Black Cat, inviting him to a specific location. When he arrived, he found a tape recorder and a camera focused on one of her Black Cat RFID harvesters. Realizing she was back in the game, Spider-Man alerted Yuri. Exhausted, Peter crashed on a couch at the FEAST shelter. The next morning, Aunt May handed him some cash, insisting he accept her help. She reminded him that sometimes pride must be set aside, just like Uncle Ben would have done. Martin Lee interrupted their conversation to announce he was leaving town and placing May in charge. Shortly after, MJ called Peter, inviting him to a ceremony honoring Jefferson Davis. At a Fisk construction site, Spider-Man discovered the demons eliminating Fisk's men and taking control. After saving the remaining workers, Spider-Man confiscated a phone and called Fisk. Reluctantly, Fisk shared that the demon's leader could be found on the rooftop. Spider-Man reached the roof just as the leader boarded a helicopter. A high-stakes chase ensued across the city, with Spider-Man webbing a container to the helicopter to slow it down. The chase caused chaos, but Spider-Man eventually disabled the helicopter, preventing it from crashing. On the ground, Miles Morales, Jefferson Davis's son, recorded the spectacle on his phone, his text revealing the connection to his father. At the ceremony honoring Jefferson Davis, Peter and MJ joined the crowd as Davis took the stage with his family. Mayor Norman Osborn presented the medal, but was called away by a mysterious phone call. The caller warned Osborn that something terrible was about to happen, promising to make him suffer. As Jefferson delivered his speech, Peter's spider sense flared. The inner demons, led by Martin Lee, surrounded the pavilion. Using their negative powers, they revealed themselves, with some strapped to explosive vests. Chaos erupted when one demon detonated his bomb on the crowd's edge. Another, disguised as the deputy mayor, attempted to do the same on stage, but Jefferson tackled him, sacrificing himself to save others. In the aftermath, Miles searched for his parents amid the destruction. He found his mother trapped under debris and freed her before pressing further into the wreckage. He eventually found his father, lifeless at the podium.
Dad! Dad, no!
A week later, Jefferson Davis's funeral brought together his family. Peter, MJ, Yuri, and even Norman Osborn. Miles, overcome
Sorry
with
for your
grief,
loss.
remained distant as Peter tried to offer comfort. The loss weighed heavily on everyone,
Peter Parker.
but for
I
Miles,
was
it
at
marked a
City-
turning point in his life, one that would shape his path forever. Mary Jane Watson calls Peter Parker with a lead.
I'm busy. What's up?
Have you started looking for Martin Lee yet?
No, I told you I can't start a manhunt based on a hunch from Spider-Man.
But I'm telling you, he's the guy. And that kid
Martin Lee owns a
was-
recycling business with suspicious ties. She shares that arrested inner demons claim Lee brings out people's negative sides, making them act against their nature. Spider-Man investigates the business and uncovers a map targeting Norman Osborn's campaign offices, weapons, explosives, and blueprints for truck bombs. He traces the next hideout and clears out the demons at Consolidated Shipping. Inside, he finds maps of demon warehouses and more evidence.
Like the demons.
After defeating more demons, Sable International arrives. Silver Sable herself appears, capturing Spider-Man with trap gadgets. Luckily, Captain Yuriko Watanabe intervenes, ordering his release. She explains Sable was hired by Osborn for protection.
Has a pet army now?
Meanwhile, Peter suggests Aunt May hire Miles Morales at FEAST.
Having a tough time.
Later, Peter sneaks into Lee's office, finding a heartfelt letter to Aunt May and Lee's journal, where he laments the power of his inner demon. Peter discovers a secret room filled with weapons and evidence of Lee's vendetta against Osborn.
This might help us
A
figure out
recording
what these-
reveals Lee believes becoming a monster
Father would say I've lost the path of balance, and he could never understand.
is the only way to fight one. While escaping a triggered trap, Peter bumps into Lee, who seems unfazed. Lee announces he's leaving town and departs, but Peter is attacked by homeless people under Lee's control. After subduing them,
Finally
Peter
got your
informs
evidence.
Yuri about
Head to
Lee's
the
connection to
fusion center in
Devil's Breath,
Chinatown.
a
What am I going to
bioweapon
find?
created by
A nice
Oscorp.
lady named May Parker.
Peter updates Mary Jane and promises to meet her for dinner. However, Otto Octavius calls Peter to the lab. There, Peter learns of Otto's failed prosthetics and his growing animosity toward Osborn. Otto shares their history, former friends and lab partners, now divided by ethics.
Bad jokes.
After fixing the prosthetics,
I think we did it.
Otto plans to build a neural interface, with Peter volunteering to help despite Otto's financial struggles. Peter heads to Mary Jane's apartment for dinner. She recounts her own investigation at Lee's property, where she discovered military-grade equipment, a project involving Tombstone, and a GPS tracker. Over chicken curry, they discuss teaming up as partners. An alert about Oscorp's CFO, Charles Standish, interrupts their dinner, sending Spider-Man on another mission. At Standish's penthouse, Spider-Man saves him from the inner demons. Standish reveals the demons sought financial records on Devil's Breath, a secret Oscorp project Norman Osborn has funded for years. Before more details emerge, a helicopter attack forces Spider-Man to save Standish in a daring elevator rescue. Spider-Man informs Yuri about Standish and updates Mary Jane, who digs into Dr. Isaac Delaney, another key figure in Oscorp's payroll. Mary Jane finds a photo of Delaney and sends Spider-Man to Empire State University. There, Spider-Man finds Delaney, disguised as the Lizard, but the inner demons abduct him. Spider-Man follows, saving students along the way. Confronting Lee, Spider-Man watches him transform into Mr. Negative, using his powers to extract Delaney's knowledge about Morgan Michaels, a key Oscorp scientist. Lee leaves, and Delaney, under Lee's influence, tragically ends his own life. Spider-Man warns Yuri that Michaels is in danger. Yuri discovers Sable International is guarding Michaels, but they refuse to share his location. Mary Jane learns that Osborn hired Wilson Fisk to build a secret lab for Devil's Breath, and suspects Fisk retained blackmail material. Spider-Man infiltrates Oscorp's tower, overhearing Osborn discuss the Nio statue with Fisk. Accessing Norman's computer, Spider-Man uncovers Project GR-27, intended to cure diseases, but instead creating the deadly Devil's Breath. Morgan Michaels holds the only sample. Peter updates Mary Jane, who is already tracking Michaels to Central Park. On his way to meet her, Otto calls Peter about a breakthrough, unlocking the power of the mind. Mary Jane had a lead. Charles Standish might know where Morgan Michaels was being kept, but when she told Peter her plan to sneak into his location, he panicked. "That's too dangerous," Peter exclaimed, rushing to Central Park to stop her. When he arrived, his worst fear became reality. MJ was being held at gunpoint. Flashback to 15 minutes earlier, Mary Jane had slipped into the guarded area with her usual determination. Using her investigative skills, she captured photos of a screen showing that the inner demons were targeting anyone connected to Devil's Breath. She also found locations of their safe houses. When she found Standish, he mistook her for one of Martin Lee's people and pointed a gun at her. Thinking fast, MJ showed her reporter badge and calmed him down. Standish revealed Michaels was in the Bowery. He started to say more, something about Grand Central Station, but Peter burst in, startling him. Standish fell and knocked himself out. With Sable forces closing in, Peter whisked MJ away, but she scolded him later. "This is why we broke up, Peter. You treat me like I can't handle myself." The awkward conversation with MJ lingered as Peter swung across the city. Thankfully, Dr. Octavius called with a distraction. In the lab, Otto tested his neural interface, which allowed him to control his prosthetic arms seamlessly. But when Peter saw the test results, he grew concerned. The device could alter Otto's personality. Otto admitted he was racing against time. A neurological condition was stealing his motor functions. Peter promised to help, but worry shadowed his thoughts. Later, Peter checked in at the FEAST shelter, where Aunt May introduced him to Miles Morales. On his way there, Peter had saved Miles from a mugging, even giving the young man some fighting tips. At the shelter, Miles began his first day by helping residents and proving he had the heart of a hero, just like his dad, Jefferson Davis. The peace didn't last. Peter learned that Morgan Michaels was on the move with Sable International. He found their convoy just as the inner demons attacked, led by Mr. Negative himself. The chaos escalated quickly, and Spider-Man was pulled into a strange negative zone where Martin Lee taunted him, blaming Norman Osborn for the City Hall bombing. Spider-Man refused to join Lee's cause, leading to a fierce battle that ended with the demons escaping with Devil's Breath. Spider-Man barely stopped the runaway truck from causing more destruction, but Sable took Michaels into protective custody. Meanwhile, Mary Jane followed her lead to Grand Central Station, where she uncovered Martin Lee's plan to release Devil's Breath and frame Norman Osborn. She called Spider-Man for help. Together, they worked to disable drones and save hostages. Despite disagreements about their partnership, they defused a bomb and stopped Lee. Spider-Man chased Lee into the subway, defeating him and sending him to the raft. But trouble was far from over. Back at Otto's lab, Peter discovered Otto had already installed a neural interface. Though it worked flawlessly, the results showed a dangerous effect on Otto's mind. When Norman Osborn took credit for apprehending Martin Lee on the news, Otto's rage boiled over, and he smashed the TV with his mechanical arm. At the same time, Rikers Island erupted into chaos. Spider-Man rushed to help Yuri Watanabe contain the prison break. But things took a dark turn when Electro, Vulture, Rhino, Scorpion, and Mr. Negative ambushed Spider-Man. The Sinister Six, now led by Doctor Octopus, overpowered him. As Spider-Man struggled to recover, Octavius warned him to stay out of their way before throwing him off the raft. The villains had their orders, and the city would soon feel the consequences. It takes place in Times Square, where there's a large group of people with signs rooting for Norman Osborn and wanting to re-elect him for mayor. However, we see Doctor Octopus at the top of a tower in Times Square. He goes down, destroying a billboard of Norman on the way down. His arms then take the devil's breath and release it onto the city. Many people start coughing, and many people catch the plague. Dr. Octopus wears a gas mask so he doesn't get infected, and then he goes away. 24 hours later, Aunt May is working at VAST. However, she starts coughing up blood, and it is shown that she catch the plague and is sick. Mary Jane Watson reports live on the television and says that Norman Osborn has claimed Spider-Man a fugitive and blames him for the plague. Mary Jane mentions that there is no evidence that Spider-Man was the reason for the plague, and that Norman is just deflecting blame. She also says that the devil's breath originated in an Oscorp lab in Manhattan. Norman tells his assistant to turn off the TV, and then he looks outside the window. Meanwhile, Spider-Man is on a rooftop in the city when Yuri Watanabe calls him. Yuri says that she took him to the hospital and the doctor said that he still had 14 broken bones. Spider-Man declares that he still has 192 non-broken ones and that he needs to get back to work. Yuri also tells him that Sable International have labeled him as a priority target and that they will try to hunt Spider-Man down. Yuri also tells him that there are prisoner camps and Sable outposts throughout the city. Spider-Man says that he will take the city back and stop them. Yuri calls Spider-Man requesting urgent help for her officers. She then requests Spider-Man take out either Rhino or Electro. On the way there, Aunt May calls to tell Spider-Man that men from Rikers are at the VAST's sister office, the Veterans Center, ransacking it and demanding supplies. After dealing with the precincts, a panicked Mary Jane Watson calls and says, "It is urgent, Spider-Man. Get to the Veterans Center." The convicts set the building ablaze, trapping Miles Morales and Aunt May inside. Inside, Spider-Man finds Miles and May trapped on a collapsing floor, using his webbing to hold it in place. He cannot quite make it to the open window, but Mary Jane appears, coming inside to push against a beam that falls, closing the gap. Aunt May manages to get to safety, but not Miles as the floor shifts. Spider-Man's webbing unlatches just as Miles jumps, and Mary Jane helps him to her side. Just then, the floor above collapses onto Spider-Man. He manages to get off a shot, but it does not stick to anything. Miles manages to grab it, and then he and Mary Jane pull Spider-Man to safety. After, Mary Jane and Spider-Man reconcile. Mary Jane says she is happy to have rescued him, as it is hard for her to always be the one to be saved. Spider-Man enlists both Mary Jane and Miles for aid. Mary Jane to track down an antidote for the devil's breath, and Miles to keep an eye and ear open at VAST. Yuri calls Spider-Man to let him know the department cannot do a forensic sweep of Times Square because everyone is sick. There, Spider-Man follows a dispersal trial into Doctor Octopus's lair. At the lair, Spider-Man uncovers more of Otto's hatred for Norman Osborn and the origins of the Sinister Six group, as Otto Octavius made promises to them in exchange for their help, while Martin Lee already shared Otto's distaste of Osborn. He has also been searching for weakness to the armor worn by Sable International and has left messages for his crew. One of them is for Scorpion, about a reservoir job. Spider-Man sees a map of where each major villain has been assigned to strike at Oscorp. Mr. Negative will go after the anti-serum for Devil's Breath using Icarus. Searching the lair further reveals that Icarus itself is just a ruse, as Otto has left behind a case full of explosive that Spider-Man trips upon opening. Spider-Man escapes via a vent, only to be captured by Vulture and hauled across the city to a waiting Electro. Spider-Man defeats them both. Dr. Octopus over the phone tells Spider-Man that if he truly wanted to help the city, he would expose Osborn's crimes and promised he would have restored New York's power once he was done with Osborn. Spider-Man tells Otto he is sick and needs help, then leaves to take a quick nap to recover. After his fight with Electro and Vulture, Spider-Man falls asleep from exhaustion on the rooftop, awakening the next morning. He calls Yuriko Watanabe to let her know that he is going after Scorpion at the city's reservoir, believing that New York City would never recover if they lost clean water. Upon arrival, Scorpion gets the drop on Spider-Man. Scorpion reveals he would prefer to kill Spider-Man, but that Doctor Octopus wants to torture him first. Scorpion then uses his stinger tail to inject Spider-Man with poison. This gives Spider-Man hallucinations of Scorpion and of Otto Octavius, telling Peter that he is a failure, while Peter moves around the city to put together an antidote. Once successful, Spider-Man finds himself back in the lab, having taken the antidote, and in his undies. With Scorpion's poison wearing off, Peter Parker decides it is a good time to visit Aunt May. Once there, she appears to be sick.
Let me go.
Peter attempts to contact Miles Morales, who has been sent to retrieve more medical supplies from the relief center. Miles, at the waterfront, steals antibiotics from convicts. After successfully finding the amoxicillin he was looking for, Rhino bursts on the scene, knocking out the Sable International soldiers and interrogating them about their supply routes. Scorpion arrives to assist with the questioning. When he stabs one of the men with his tail, Miles runs, knocking over a toolbox in his haste. Once Miles escapes, he runs into some escaped convicts who are trying to mug a man. He intervenes, fighting one of them. After hearing from Miles Morales following his own encounter with Rhino at the relief center, Spider-Man contacts Yuriko Watanabe and lets her know that Rhino is targeting relief centers throughout the city. She directs him to where Rhino likely is, Harlem. While traveling there, Mary Jane Watson calls Spider-Man had simpler lives, Spider-Man reassuring her that their work is important so the next generation can enjoy the simpler lives they had. Spider-Man battles the two there. After the battle, Scorpion taunts Rhino a little too much, and Rhino charges him. Spider-Man takes advantage of the situation and seals them both inside a storage container with his webbing. Spider-Man calls Yuri to inform her. Mary Jane Watson calls Peter Parker to let him know she has not found the location of the Devil's Breath lab. As it was not in the city, state, or federal databases, she suspects the lab is off the books and that its location may be in Norman Osborn's penthouse. With it full of Sable International soldiers, she thinks she has a better chance of sneaking in and avoiding a firefight than Spider-Man. He agrees to wait outside in case she needs backup. Mary Jane sneaks in through the elevator just as Silver Sable and Norman Osborn exit. In the penthouse, Mary Jane accesses a secret lab, then witnesses some records and discovers the truth of Mr. Negative's origin, that Norman and Otto were working on GR-27, Devil's Breath, some time ago, and Norman rushed ahead with human trials by giving a young Martin Lee the serum when his parents came in for a consultation. Lee exhibits his trademark negative abilities, appearing to kill both his parents. Mary Jane begins downloading the information, but is startled by a container that holds a jumping bioengineered spider, causing one of the nearby glass containers to shatter, releasing the spider but also alerting Silver Sable. As Sable leaves, Mary Jane sneaks out to the balcony. As she takes out the last guard there, he fires a round, alerting the other soldiers. With no other recourse, and with Silver Sable and her men approaching, she leaps off the edge to be caught by Spider-Man below. Spider-Man drops her at the FEAST shelter as she fills him in on Harry's sickness and the origin of Mr. Negative, also giving him the location of the Devil's Breath lab. Spider-Man heads off to retrieve the anti-serum. Along the way, Spider-Man calls Yuriko Watanabe to tell her he is finding the cure. Yuri then informs him that a helicopter just went down at the address of the secret lab. Mr. Negative has captured Norman, and his inner demons patrol the ground and rooftops outside. Spider-Man defeats them. Sable International troops arrive and attack Spider-Man. At the culmination of the fight, Silver Sable appears. Sable threatens to kill Spider-Man for his damage to her men and her client, but listening to his logic, she finally decides that they are better off working together rather than against each other, and agrees to a temporary truce until Norman is secure. She allows him into the building, but when inner demons show up outside, she stays behind to fend them off, leaving him to follow Lee's trail through the building. After reaching Lee, Lee gets the jump on Spider-Man as he enters the lower level, and Lee sends Spider-Man to a negative zone to try and convince him again. When Spider-Man exits, Norman is screaming in the other room. Dr. Morgan Michaels then gives Lee the only sample of an anti-serum developed against Devil's Breath, and Lee tortures Osborn before Spider-Man interrupts and battles him. Spider-Man tries to urge Lee that Osborn deserves true justice, which will not happen if Lee continues to be violent, though Lee is undeterred. Upon Lee's defeat, Doctor Octopus enters the room. Via cutscene, he fights Spider-Man and knocks him out, taking the anti-serum for himself. He then takes Norman and heads out of the building. Silver Sable rushes in moments later to find Spider-Man on the floor, mortally wounded. Sable and Dr. Michaels take him to FEAST, where Dr. Michaels works to save his life. Though he is saved, Spider-Man insists on finding the anti-serum before resting, especially when he learns Aunt May is sick and in bed from the Devil's Breath. Mary Jane insists he uses brains to defeat Otto, rather than relying solely on his spider powers. At the scene's end, a spider from Osborn's lab that hitched a ride on Mary Jane's coat bites Miles Morales. On the way to the lab at Octavius Industries, Silver Sable calls to let Spider-Man know she is leaving the city, having doubts as to her chosen life, but that her soldiers will remain behind. With no time left, Mary Jane informs via phone call that May Parker's condition is worsening because of being infected by Devil's Breath. Even worse, Yuriko Watanabe and most of the police officers are infected by Devil's Breath, Yuri staying with her mother, who is also infected. Once in the lab, Peter creates a suit designed specifically to defeat Doctor Octopus, the anti-Ock suit. After suiting up, an incoming news alert lets him know where Octopus has kidnapped Norman and climbed into the tower. There, Dr. Octopus climbs up the Oscorp's tower, attempting to force the mayor into admitting his failings. When Norman refuses, Octopus drops him. Spider-Man manages to catch Norman in time, allowing him to flee before approaching Octopus on the roof. He makes one last-ditch effort to dissuade Otto, but he fails, leading them to fight. After Peter rips out Otto's neural interface, Otto reveals that he knew Spider-Man was Peter all along. The two fight, and the tower is ripped free from the roof to send them both tumbling over at the edge. The two fight on the side of the tower. When Octopus stabs him with an arm, Spider-Man pulls the arm in closer, taking advantage of the moment to rip the interface free again. Otto falls, and Spider-Man follows to retrieve the anti-serum. They crash into the side of the tower and into a room, where Otto is unable to move. Otto first accuses Peter of betrayal, but Peter responds that Otto's willpower and conscience made him the hero that he wanted to be. Though Otto then attempts to convince Spider-Man that his actions were all the result of the interface, Spider-Man takes the anti-serum and turns away, letting the authorities take him in. With the anti-serum secured, Dr. Morgan Michaels informs Spider-Man that there's only enough for one dose. Producing more will take hours. Peter faces an impossible choice: save his dying Aunt May, or use the serum to protect the entire city. Peter visits May in her final moments, where she reveals she's known his secret identity all along. "Ben would be so proud of you," she whispers, her voice full of love. Tearfully, Peter makes the hardest decision of his life, letting May go. Her last words reassure him it was the right thing to do. The next day, with Tricorp's help, the Devil's Breath vaccine is mass-produced and distributed across the city. Miles Morales and his mother, Rio, assist in the effort. Later, Peter and his friends attend May's funeral, where she is laid to rest beside Uncle Ben. Meanwhile, Sable forces escort Otto Octavius to the raft, his plans defeated. 3 months later, Peter Parker, searching for a new job, reconciles with Mary Jane Watson, now an associate editor at the Daily Bugle. The two rekindle their romance, taking things one step at a time. While temporarily staying at Miles's apartment, Peter is shocked when Miles reveals his newfound powers from a spider bite. In return, Peter reveals his identity as Spider-Man, solidifying their bond as mentor and protege. Post-credits scene, Norman Osborn returns to his secret lab, where he reveals his son Harry, suspended in a tank and bonded to the Venom symbiote. The symbiote is the only thing keeping Harry's inherited illness at bay. As Norman vows to find a cure, the symbiote stirs ominously, hinting at the chaos to come.
I will.
A new Spider-Man has risen, but his journey is far from easy. A city on the brink of chaos, a corporation hiding a deadly secret, and a friendship torn apart by tragedy. When power and responsibility collide, how far will Miles go to protect the ones he loves? This is the story of Marvel's Spider-Man, Miles Morales, a tale of loss, redemption, and the true weight of being a hero. Miles Morales takes a train home to Harlem and gets a text from his mom to grab groceries. On the way, he sees a mural of Spider-Man, but notices it only features Peter. He suggests adding his version too, then heads to Teo's bodega. Before he can buy anything, Peter texts him that a prison convoy is leaving early. Miles suits up and swings to meet him. As they follow the convoy, Rhino breaks loose, causing chaos. Miles tries to secure a helicopter carrying Rhino's container, but the wire snaps. But the crash frees Rhino and other prisoners. Peter fights Rhino while Miles handles the escapees. Rhino goes on a rampage, forcing Miles to chase him. Peter rides on Rhino's back, but the villain leaps into a mall, endangering civilians. He crashes into J. Jonah Jameson's podcast set, making him furious. In the middle of this, Miles' mom calls, reminding him about the groceries. Rhino smashes into a gas tank, throwing Miles into a pipe. Peter is badly hurt, and Rhino tosses him through a wall. Seeing this, Miles, in a burst of anger, unleashes his Venom power for the first time, stunning Rhino. He fights back and eventually knocks him out. Roxanne and Simon Krieger arrive, congratulating the heroes before taking over. Later, Peter and Miles eat pizza on a rooftop. Peter tells Miles he's leaving town with MJ for a few weeks and asks him to watch over New York. Before leaving, he gives Miles a gift, marking the start of Miles' journey as the city's only Spider-Man. After defeating Rhino, Miles contacts Ganke Lee and informs him about the gift he received from Spider-Man. He decides to meet him at the amphitheater in Central Park. He changes behind some boxes while Ganke hides him from the public. While swinging to his destination, Miles listens to Danica Hart's podcast and becomes a fan when she praises his takedown of Rhino. At the location, a holographic Spider-Man introduces his first training session, focused on acrobatic combat. Miles practices air attacks and other moves to improve his fighting skills. After training, the hologram malfunctions, and thugs arrive to steal the tech. Miles defeats them, fixes the gear, and unlocks more spider training locations. Miles arrives at a Newform reactor site, where a large screen of Simon Krieger explains that Newform is a revolutionary fuel source capable of powering Harlem for 500 years. He plans to expand it across Manhattan and eventually worldwide. Suddenly, Miles hears a window break and rushes inside, but finds no one. He discovers a computer showing that someone was searching for Newform. Before he can investigate further, an underground member ambushes him and throws him outside, where more enemies are waiting. After defeating them, Miles overhears the name The Tinkerer and learns they are tracking Newform shipments. Roxanne security arrives, so he decides to investigate later and heads home for Christmas dinner. After his mission, Miles changes into his regular clothes on the roof and enters his apartment through his bedroom window. He sets up for dinner by turning on Christmas lights and playing music. When the doorbell rings, he's surprised to see his old best friend, Finn. During their reunion, the power suddenly goes out. Miles checks the circuit breaker, but finds no issue. He sneaks outside through his window and uses his Venom power to restore power. Ganke quickly creates a distraction to keep Finn and Rio from noticing Miles' absence. During dinner, Rio asks Finn about her brother, Rick Mason, and Finn briefly looks sad before changing the subject. After dinner, while washing dishes, Miles notices Finn seems distracted, but she avoids talking about it. Since they haven't seen each other in a while, he suggests a friend date the next day, and she agrees. The next morning, Genki wakes Miles up to show him the FNSM app, which allows New Yorkers to report crimes or request Spider-Man's help. Miles heads to the train stop where Officer Davis is working and learns about train disruptions. Davis mentions that the underground has been active in the area and now has a new leader, the Tinkerer. At Grand Central, Miles follows cables and finds the signals are being jammed. After disabling them, he discovers a crate of underground tech and uses it to create the Holodrone gadget. His suit detects more tech crates around the city for future upgrades. After taking down more underground members, Davis reports that no trains are running, despite the restored signal. Miles heads to the train yard, defeats more enemies, and finds the controls destroyed. Using his Venom power and webbing, he manually gets the trains back on track. Davis later offers Spider-Man a gift, but first, Miles must stop underground members planting bombs on the tracks. After defeating them, he receives an unlimited subway pass with his name on it. Davis reveals he knew Miles' identity all along, but promises to keep it a secret. With this in mind, Miles continues patrolling the city to help those in need. Finn and Miles lift a grate to reveal a hidden time capsule, but forget the combination. Miles recalls a memory with Finn and Rick in the same spot and remembers the code is the Fibonacci sequence. They open the box and find the reward they won for their energy converter invention. Still worried about Finn, Miles asks why they lost touch, but she avoids answering. Frustrated by her secrecy, he decides that next time they meet, he will get the truth. Miles and Genki attend Rio Morales' campaign rally, which is interrupted by the Tinkerer, who accuses Simon Krieger of being a killer. The underground launches an attack to stop Roxxon Plaza from opening, sparking a battle between them and Roxxon guards. Miles swings into action to stop the chaos. After defeating the underground, Miles spots an explosion at Braithwaite Bridge and rushes there, encountering the Tinkerer. Cornered, he uses his Venom energy to escape and tries to take the new form canister, but the energy reacts violently, tearing off Tinkerer's mask, revealing Finn. Shocked, Miles is thrown into a truck of new form canisters, accidentally triggering a massive explosion that destroys the bridge. Finn flees, leaving her goons to fight Miles. After defeating them, he focuses on saving civilians trapped in the wreckage. He webs parts of the bridge together, uses a semi-truck as a platform, and performs a daring rescue to save a stranded person. As Roxxon guards arrive, they aim their guns at Miles without letting him explain. Suddenly, he turns invisible, escaping unseen. Angry at how he was treated, he heads home. The next day, though saddened by the events, Rio remains determined to continue her campaign. Inspired by her resilience, Genki encourages Miles to embrace his role as Spider-Man. They craft a new suit, and Miles swings through New York, ready to face the challenges ahead. After the events on Braithwaite Bridge, Miles sneaks into Finn's old repair shop and discovers a secret room with a computer. He finds two videos, one showing the harmful effects of new form and Finn's plan to expose it, and another where Finn admits the plan failed because her phone was damaged. Miles decides to track her phone for more answers, but before he can continue, the underground arrives. After defeating them, he finds the phone's location and swings away, unaware that the Prowler is watching him. Miles defeats enemies and absorbs energy to disable the building's shielding. Inside, he's surprised by the Prowler, who reveals himself as his uncle, Aaron Davis. Aaron warns Miles to leave, but Miles insists on continuing and asks for help. Aaron disables another shield, allowing Miles to overhear Simon Krieger pressuring a scientist to produce more new form. After defeating more enemies, Miles reaches the new form reactor and discovers multiple research labs across the city. He then finds Finn's phone and watches a video revealing that Rick and Finn tried to destroy the reactor, but Krieger let the energy kill Rick, leaving Finn devastated. Determined, Miles absorbs the reactor's energy, causing massive destruction and destroying Finn's phone. He escapes with Aaron, fighting off enemies along the way. As they flee on a train, Aaron advises Miles to get close to Finn and infiltrate the underground. Miles meets Finn at a coffee shop, telling her he understands her reasons and wants to join. She agrees and takes him to a rooftop, where he must prove himself by leaping from a crane to Fisk Tower. After succeeding, he is accepted into the underground. When Finn steps away, Miles investigates. Once she returns, he makes an excuse to leave, and later returns in costume, defeating enemies. Ganke informs him of Fisk's secret passages, leading Miles to a hidden elevator. Inside, he overhears Finn and the underground. Using camouflage, he studies their hideout map, but is attacked. After defeating a sword-wielding enemy with a Venom-powered dash, he notes the hideout locations and escapes. Miles plans to uncover Finn's intentions and take the new form from her. It's stored in an auditorium, but he first defeats enemies and drains generators blocking his way. Inside, he tries to retrieve the new form, but Tinkerer and her goons arrive. After fighting them off, Miles reaches for the vial, but Tinkerer easily knocks him away. A high-speed chase through Manhattan ensues, leaving destruction in their wake. When Miles finally catches up, Tinkerer draws her programmable matter sword and threatens him, until he unmasks himself, leaving Finn in shock. Depressed by his decision to reveal his identity to Finn, Miles calls his uncle Aaron for advice. Aaron suggests a distraction in the form of completing the mixtape he and his brother never finished. Once he collected a sound sample, Miles asks Aaron why he and Jefferson separated. Aaron then promises to tell Miles the entire story once the latter finishes the mixtape. Miles wakes up at home and meets Finn at Trinity Church to discuss their plan. However, Prowler leaks their location to Roxxon, leading to Rhino, now upgraded with Roxxon armor, ambushing and capturing them. They wake up in a Roxxon lab where Krieger interrogates them. Working together, they escape, but Finn remains angry at Miles for lying to her. Meanwhile, Prowler confronts Krieger for breaking their deal and threatens to expose Roxxon, but Krieger warns that doing so would incriminate him as well. After retrieving her gear, Finn helps Miles escape. Miles powers up the facility's engine to break into the control room, but Rhino attacks. During the fight, Miles destroys Rhino's Venom-proof armor and defeats him. As Miles examines Roxxon's reactor plans, he realizes Finn's plan could destroy Harlem. Rhino taunts Finn about Rick's death, pushing her into a rage. She nearly kills Rhino, but Miles stops her, causing her to turn on him, beat him down and leave, determined to carry out her plan. Injured, Miles calls Ganke for help. Back home, his mother Rio discovers his secret identity and learns of Finn's plan. She accepts Miles as Spider-Man, encouraging him to fight for Harlem. With Ganke hacking security cameras and Rio helping evacuate civilians, Miles heads to the Oscorp Science Center to stop Finn before it's too late. While on his way to the Oscorp Science Center, Miles gets kidnapped by his uncle Aaron Davis, disguised as the Prowler. He is then taken to a subway line where Aaron tells Miles to just let Simon Krieger and Finn kill each other. The two get into an argument, and after they battle, Miles tells his uncle that he can't turn his back on the city when they need him most. Miles learns that the final piece to Finn's weapons is a science project they created. He learns that this is the same project that helped them win the science fair back in middle school. He goes to the museum to retrieve it. Finn took her new form sample to Roxxon Plaza, planning to overload the reactor and destroy the complex. However, as Miles had discovered, Krieger had changed the reactor's specs, meaning that her overloading it would destroy all of Harlem. A redeemed Prowler arrives to assist evacuating all of Harlem's citizens who were trapped in the battlefield between Underground and Roxxon, allowing Miles to proceed to Finn without any interferences. Finn ignored Miles's warnings. Her trust in him eroded after he had previously lied, and battled him in the buildings of the plaza. As their battle continued, Simon Krieger broadcast that he did not care about the reactor going critical, as it would look good for the company if they had suffered a terrorist attack. This fueled Finn's anger further, and the battle continued, though she eventually saw that it was doing more damage than she had intended, and that Miles was right. Miles webbed her to safety after they both fell from the building, and he used his bioelectric powers to absorb the reactor's energy. Seeing Miles would not survive, and remembering a flashback of her brother's last moments, Finn has a change of heart and sacrifices herself by using her programmable matter boots to propel herself and Miles high above Manhattan, allowing Miles to safely release the reactor's energy stored inside his body, killing her in the process. As Miles' crash landed to the ground of a destroyed plaza, the neighbors of Harlem and Rio begin to rush towards him. To their relief, Miles survives, but mourns together with his neighborhood over Finn's death. As the news reporters arrive on the scene, the citizens of Harlem and Rio cover Miles' identity as Harlem Spider-Man from being exposed to the public. Just as Miles swings away from the scene. Two Spider-Men, one city, and a darkness that could tear them apart. Peter Parker and Miles Morales face their greatest challenge yet. Kraven the Hunter's ruthless hunt and the rise of the monstrous Venom. As the symbiote spreads, alliances are tested, and the line between hero and villain begins to blur. Will they conquer the darkness? This is Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Let's dive in. 2 years ago, Harry Osborn stood in front of a large vat. Inside, a dark, shifting substance, the Venom symbiote, swirled menacingly. His father, Norman Osborn, stood beside him, speaking with calm reassurance. "This will be good for you, Harry," he said. Moments later, Harry was lowered into the vat, his body bonding with the symbiote. He awoke, transformed, but trapped, as the vat was sealed, and he was placed into stasis. Present day. At Brooklyn Vision's Academy, Miles Morales sat in class, visibly stressed. His mind wasn't on the lesson, it was on his college application. But his focus was broken when Peter Parker burst into the room, flustered and late. Principal Evans introduced Peter as the new physics teacher, and Peter awkwardly began introducing himself. Miles, noticing something out of place, motioned to Peter to fix his collar. His advanced suit 2.0 was peeking through. Peter quickly adjusted it and started teaching, launching into a lecture about surface tension. Just then, a strong gust of dust blew past the windows. Miles noticed it immediately and excused himself, claiming he needed the restroom. Peter continued teaching, but soon, the dust swirled into the classroom through an open window. A student quickly shut it. But moments later, Miles returned, looking panicked. He leaned toward Peter and whispered, "I need your help." Some students giggled, but Peter understood. Peter told the class to begin reading and followed Miles out of the room, muttering, "I need this job, Miles. Don't get me fired." On the rooftop, Miles pointed across the bay, where a massive sandstorm raged. The two Spider-Men suited up and headed toward the financial district, where Marco, Sandman, was on a rampage. As they swung through the city, Peter received a call from Principal Evans, furious that he'd left his class. Peter tried to make excuses, but the principal wasn't buying it. Meanwhile, Miles shared his own struggles with his college essay, and the two agreed. They needed to wrap this up fast. When they arrived, the scene was chaos. Marco had transformed into a massive sand creature, his rage tearing through the financial district. Peter tried to reason with him, but Marco wasn't listening. He attacked, throwing Peter into a building. As Peter fought off sand clones and saved trapped civilians, he received another call from the principal, who threatened to fire him if he didn't return immediately. Miles, meanwhile, used his Venom power to weaken Marco, turning parts of his sand body into glowing fulgurite. But it wasn't enough. Desperate for a plan, Miles called Gonka, who directed them to a large water tank on a nearby rooftop. The two heroes led Marco there, but the battle escalated. Marco slammed through the building, separating Peter and Miles. As Miles fought off sand clones, Peter managed to destroy the water tank, drenching Marco and reducing his massive form to mud. But it wasn't over. Marco used sand from a nearby beach to reconstruct himself. Larger and angrier than before, he unleashed tornadoes of sand, forcing the Spider-Men to retreat. Peter, using his suit's new wings, returned to the fight. Together, he and Miles coordinated a final attack. Miles transferred his Venom power to Peter's suit, and Peter used his spider arms to fire a powerful energy beam, shattering Marco's giant form. Defeated, Marco reverted to his human form. As he was taken into custody, he warned the two heroes, his voice heavy with despair. "You won't be okay when they come for you." His cryptic words left Peter and Miles uneasy. 6 months earlier, Kraven the Hunter stood over the lifeless body of his latest prey. Disappointed, he muttered, "Not a challenge." One of his men approached, showing him a map of New York City. It marked the locations of the city's villains. Kraven's eyes lit up with excitement. "Prepare to depart," he said. Back in current-day New York City, Peter and Miles are helping with the cleanup and rescue operations left in Marco's wake, as they notice that the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man app is down. Ganke resolves to fix it as he informs Peter of a location where citizens require help. Ganke also works with Peter to 3D print a drone to serve as a makeshift local network, allowing Peter to receive reports from citizens. Peter is immediately informed of a crime report happening nearby. Peter fights off the burglars while revealing new gadgets. The scene switches to Miles, who is instructed by Ganke to 3D print an additional drone, and Miles is immediately informed of a burglary nearby. As Miles fights off the criminals, he receives a call from Rio, reminding him to visit with his school's counselor. Miles sees a report nearby about civilians trapped in a burning building and rushes to help. After saving the civilians, they inform him about a peculiar crystal appearing. Miles investigates the crystal, but is suddenly attacked by a group of Marco's sand clones. Miles receives a call from MJ, who confirms Marco is still in custody, and she explains that Marco's mind has been shattered into pieces, and the crystals and the sand clones are meant to protect the remnants of his mind. If Miles can locate all of the crystals, he can begin to make Marco whole again. Miles defeats the sand clones and acquires the crystal, revealing a piece of Marco's memories. Miles receives a call from Peter to accept the last request in the app, saving a VP in a crashed limo surrounded by criminals. Miles opens the limo and encounters a semi-conscious Jameson, and Miles carries him to a nearby hospital. Peter joins Miles on the way, and Jameson wakes up in distress, believing he is being kidnapped by the Spider-Men. Peter and Miles arrive back at school, where Miles learns his friends earned acceptance into college, but Peter gets fired by Principal Evans. Peter receives a call from Miles, who extends his condolences for Peter getting fired. Miles gives him advice on an open photo call at the New York Bulletin. Peter recognizes that Robbie Robertson, a former colleague at the Daily Bugle, is the owner of the paper. Knowing what kind of photos Robbie would like, Peter departs to take some photos. Peter spots two civilians throwing a frisbee on top of adjacent rooftops and snaps a photo, which is immediately sent to Robbie. Robbie gracefully accepts the photo and expresses a warm welcome to Peter. As he is about to duck into a meeting, Robbie instructs Peter to send any subsequent photos, capturing the essence of New York to him. After taking a few photos for Robbie, Peter remarks that his suit is full of sand from his encounter with Flint Marco, and he needs to change into a new one. Peter heads to a tall building where he keeps a duffel bag with another suit. After changing suits, Peter receives a call from MJ, who plans to meet him back at his house to deliver something for him. Peter heads home to meet her, choosing to withhold the news that he's been fired, for now. Peter Parker meets Mary Jane Watson outside Aunt May's house, where he now lives. He tells her about losing his job, and MJ shares that she might lose hers if she doesn't deliver a big story for J. Jonah Jameson. MJ brings a box of unsold books from their trip to Symkaria. Inside, surrounded by unpacked boxes, MJ heads to the back room while Peter cleans up. He finds an unpaid mortgage bill and explains that Aunt May mortgaged the house to fund FEAST, leaving him in debt. MJ offers to help, but Peter refuses. When he asks if she'll move in, MJ says she needs to stay closer to work, and Peter is rarely home because of his Spider-Man duties. In the back room, MJ discovers Aunt May's photo albums. Peter finds a picture labeled Balance, showing him as a teen next to a hole in his bedroom wall. Curious, he checks upstairs and finds the hole hidden behind a picture frame. Flashback. A young Peter, frustrated by criticism of Spider-Man, punched the wall. Aunt May heard the noise and gave him advice about finding balance in life, saying, "It's a process, not a destination." Together, they drew cartoon eyes around the hole to lighten the mood. Back in the present, MJ leaves to investigate a prisoner transfer from the raft, but screams outside. Peter rushes out to find Harry Osborn waiting. Harry, now healthy, reunites with Peter and MJ, expressing condolences for Aunt May's passing. After MJ leaves, Harry invites Peter for a bike ride. They visit Midtown High and reminisce about an old USB project locked in Peter's old school locker. Flashback. As teens, Peter and Harry sneaked into the school to retrieve the USB. They distracted janitors and guards using web shooters and quick thinking. After recovering the USB, Norman Osborn arrived by helicopter, delivering devastating news. Harry's mother had passed away. Back in the present, Harry shows Peter a surprise in his old locker, an ID badge for the Emily May Foundation, honoring their loved ones. He invites Peter to visit the lab. Meanwhile, Kraven the Hunter arrives in New York, preparing for a prisoner transfer. Elsewhere, Miles Morales, procrastinating on his college essay, gets a call from Peter asking for help with the transfer. Miles agrees, ready for action. As his mom mentions, she started dating and wants him to meet her partner. Miles Morales heads to the raft to help Peter Parker oversee a prisoner transfer. Peter explains that Scorpion is being moved due to overcrowding after Flint Marco's arrest. To their surprise, another prisoner is added to the transfer, Martin Lee, aka Mr. Negative, who caused the City Hall bombing that killed Miles's father. Seeing Lee stirs Miles's emotions, but he quickly composes himself. As the ship carrying the prisoners departs, colored smoke fills the sky, signaling an attack by Kraven the Hunter and his forces. Peter and Miles leap onto the ship to fight off the Hunters, who are targeting Scorpion and Lee. The Hunters harpoon the ship, flooding it and endangering everyone aboard. While Peter deals with the harpoons, Miles ventures inside to rescue trapped guards. Miles encounters Scorpion, who tricks him into releasing him. Scorpion attacks Miles, infecting him with a toxin that causes haunting hallucinations. Meanwhile, the Hunters airlift Le's container. Miles fights off the toxin's effects and attempts to stop them, discovering a new power, Chain Lightning. Peter entrusts Miles with recovering Lee while he goes after Scorpion. Miles crashes the chopper carrying Lee's container, but Kraven sets the ship ablaze, sending it toward a crowded boardwalk. Miles saves civilians from the fiery wreck, fights off more Hunters, and confronts Lee, who escapes his container. Kraven captures Lee with a chopper, and Miles wrestles to stop him. As more civilians are endangered, Peter begs Miles to let Lee go and help save them. Miles finally releases Lee, using his powers to destroy a dangerous propeller and save the boardwalk. Although the Hunters succeed in capturing both Scorpion and Lee, Peter reassures Miles that his new powers, likely linked to Lee's energy, helped save lives. The two Spider-Men leave, determined to face whatever comes next. Miles Morales gets a call from his uncle, Aaron Davis, who accuses him of being too busy to visit family. Miles explains he was giving Aaron space after his release from prison, but Aaron says he doesn't need space and wants to reconnect. Miles agrees to meet him, though he's still focused on the faction that captured Scorpion and Martin Lee. In Harlem, Aaron assures Miles he doesn't want to fight, and the two share a warm hug. Sensing Miles is troubled, Aaron encourages him to let go of guilt over Lee's escape, warning that holding on to hatred will only hold him back. Moving forward, Aaron asks Miles to help recover leftover Prowler tech, as Aaron is retiring from being the Prowler due to his parole. Aaron slyly swipes Miles' mask and returns it, adding a prowler code to help locate hidden stashes. Peter Parker offers to investigate a lead on the hunters, asking Miles Morales to take a break and focus on his college essay. At Williamsburg Bridge, Peter finds no sign of the hunters, but discovers a hidden base behind an invisible force field. After defeating the hunters and activating a drone, Peter follows it to more hidden bases around the city. MJ helps investigate, uncovering that these bases are part of a larger network tied to mysterious property deals. In one base, Peter finds clues about Scorpion, Martin Lee, and Black Cat being targets of Kraven. He also discovers a rare flower with medicinal properties and a lab testing Scorpion's armor and hallucinogens. While exploring, Peter is attacked by robotic animals, but defeats them. He realizes Kraven isn't assembling these villains to work with them, he's hunting them. Meanwhile, Kraven confronts Scorpion and, unimpressed by his strength, kills him using his own tail. Peter grows worried about Felicia Hardy, Black Cat, being next. At Miles' apartment, his mom, Rio, interrupts him to meet her date, but Miles gets an urgent text from Peter and leaves abruptly. Rio notices his cracked laptop showing a headline about Martin Lee and starts to worry about Miles. Peter Parker tells Miles Morales that Kraven and his hunters are targeting supervillains, revealing they've already killed Scorpion. Peter asks Miles to warn Black Cat, knowing she's more likely to trust someone new. Mary Jane gives Miles a list of safe houses where Felicia might be hiding and advises him to stay focused and not trust Felicia's words. Miles checks a penthouse but finds signs of a struggle and tracks Felicia's footprints to a stash box. Using his powers, he uncovers that Felicia was attacked by hunters and is on the run. Following more clues, Miles finds a stash containing a signed photo of the Eiffel Tower and a manual for an artifact called the Wand of Watum, capable of creating magical portals. Spotting a hunter chopper, Miles follows it to a church where Felicia appears with the wand. She uses portals to evade him, while revealing she's trying to protect her partner in Paris. As hunters attack, Miles and Felicia team up to fight them off. Together, they create a portal to the Eiffel Tower. Felicia thanks Miles sincerely and escapes through the portal. Miles tries to use the wand to locate Martin Lee, but Wong appears, confiscates the artifact, and leaves a note saying he's back from Nepal with the doctor and that they owe him one. Miles Morales learns from Ganke Lee that Quentin Beck, Mysterio, has opened a new attraction, the Mysterium, at Coney Island. Suspecting Kraven might target Beck, Miles heads there, embarrassed when Ganke reveals Haley Cooper is also there. Disguised in regular clothes, Miles checks out the Mysterium, where Quentin promises an immersive experience. Inside, Miles dons a futuristic suit and becomes a DJ in an alternate dimension. However, things go wrong when the turntables explode, and Miles is attacked by illusions, including Martin Lee and inner demons. Quentin panics, claiming the system is malfunctioning, while Miles realizes the illusions come from his subconscious desire to find Lee. Quentin guides Miles to use a mixer to create an exit, and Miles escapes. Apologizing for the incident, Quentin shuts down the Mysterium. Afterward, Miles and Ganke meet Peter, MJ, and Harry at Coney Island. MJ invites them to hang out, but Miles, still shaken, declines and texts Haley to apologize for missing her art booth. Peter and MJ agree to check on him later. After Miles and Ganke leave Coney Island, Peter Parker, MJ, and Harry Osborn enjoy the park to celebrate Harry's recovery and the launch of the Emily May Foundation. They play games, ride the Speed Demon roller coaster, and visit attractions like go-karts, where they meet a reformed Tombstone, now working as a mechanic. Tombstone impresses everyone by saving a civilian after a go-kart crash. Later, Peter and MJ share a romantic moment on the Ferris wheel, interrupted by hunters targeting Tombstone. Peter suits up to fight them, while MJ searches for Harry. As reinforcements arrive, rides are damaged, endangering civilians. Peter saves people while struggling to stabilize the collapsing Speed Demon roller coaster. Harry uses his newfound symbiote powers to help Peter, revealing he knows Peter is Spider-Man. The two escape to a rooftop, where Harry admits his powers made him healthy, but are hard to control. They agree to meet at the Emily May Foundation to investigate further. Peter Parker visits the Emily May Foundation, where he finds Harry Osborn practicing his symbiote powers. Harry uses his abilities to create an arm to grab a marker, but accidentally breaks a window in the process. He questions Peter about why he told MJ he was Spider-Man, but didn't tell him, and also figures out that Miles Morales is the other Spider-Man. Peter explains that a lot happened while Harry was in the tank. As Harry continues practicing, Peter suggests making coffee since it's going to be a long night. The next morning, Norman Osborn arrives to find the office in disarray, and both Peter and Harry asleep on the couches. Waking them, Norman questions what happened and asks Harry about Kurt Connors, noting he never takes a day off. Sensing the tension, Peter quietly leaves. Peter Parker decides to infiltrate a Hunter base alone, reminding Miles Morales to focus on his college essay. He promises to deal with Martin Lee if necessary. While Peter begins his mission at an abandoned foundry surrounded by Hunters, Harry Osborn calls to update him on Kurt Connors' disappearance. Despite Peter's warnings, Harry arrives at the base in a black suit resembling a Spider-Man military hybrid, showcasing improved control over his powers. Together, Peter and Harry take down the Hunters, abandoning stealth for a full assault. During the fight, they nearly fall into molten lava, revealing the symbiote's weakness to high-frequency sounds. Reaching the main room, they find Tombstone imprisoned in a rigged cage. Harry uses his fireproof suit to infiltrate the cage through the furnace, working with Peter and Tombstone to break it open. Drawing on his past struggles, Harry finds the strength to destroy the cage, and the trio escapes as the foundry collapses. Tombstone thanks them, promising to be ready for future threats. Peter and Harry bond over their teamwork, but when they attempt a fist bump, black tendrils from Harry's suit briefly attach to Peter, forming a makeshift spider logo on Harry's suit. Harry heads back to the lab to check on Dr. Connors, while Peter marvels at Harry's powers. Later, Miles offers to help, but Peter assures him everything is under control. Miles notices Peter often says, "We'll talk later," leaving him feeling distant. Miles Morales visits his mom, Rio, who urges him to stop chasing Martin Lee. When Rio's colleague Angela calls for help with a malfunctioning security system at the Harlem Cultural Center, Miles suits up to assist. Angela explains the system failure is jeopardizing a key donor's support. At the museum, Miles discovers criminals have sabotaged the system to plan a robbery. Using his spider bot, Miles repairs the system while avoiding detection. After the repairs, Angela notices items are still missing. Miles confronts the thieves outside, but while fighting one group, the stolen goods are loaded onto 2 trucks. Miles chases one truck, recovering some musical items, but the other escapes. The donor, Darren, loses confidence and withdraws his support, leaving the cultural center in trouble. Peter Parker gets a call from Miles Morales about stolen museum items, but asks to call back as Harry Osborn informs him that Dr. Kurt Connors is missing. When Peter arrives at the Emily May Foundation, MJ calls to report that Hunters have taken over Connors' house. Hiding in a Hunter's van, MJ tracks them to an abandoned zoo in New Jersey, but drops her phone when the van moves. At the zoo, MJ knocks out Hunters and discovers they plan to reawaken Connors' lizard genes. After stealthily taking down more Hunters, she finds Connors locked in a cage. Using her wit, she retrieves the key and unlocks Connors' shackles. Craven arrives, injecting Connors with a substance, but Peter and Harry show up in time. Connors pleads for help, finding a serum to stop his transformation. As Connors loses control to the lizard, Craven knocks the serum from his hand and stabs Peter during a fight. Harry, enraged, battles Craven with his symbiote powers, but Peter collapses. Suddenly, the symbiote bonds with Peter, reviving him and granting him a powerful black suit. Peter defeats the Hunters, telling MJ and Harry to escape. Craven orders Connors to be tracked as Peter, Harry, and MJ regroup. Back at the lab, Harry's illness returns without the symbiote. They realize their only hope is to find Connors, now fully transformed into the lizard. and recover the serum from Kraven to create a cure. Peter noticed strange fires burning across the city. The flames weren't random. Someone was setting them on purpose. Determined to stop the destruction, he followed the trail, searching for clues. As he swung through the streets, he found terrified civilians, trapped in burning buildings. With quick reflexes and webbed precision, he pulled them to safety, barely dodging collapsing structures. But the fires kept appearing. After narrowly escaping a dangerous encounter, Peter received urgent calls from his friend Harry and reporter MJ, urging him to return to the Emily May Foundation. Upon arrival, Peter discovered that Dr. Connors was in critical condition, and time was running out to find a cure. Determined to save Dr. Connors, Peter collaborated with Harry to develop a remedy. They worked tirelessly, utilizing advanced technology to stabilize the volatile particles needed for the cure. Peter navigated through complex machinery, realigning components and ensuring the process remained stable. As they neared completion, a group of enemies attacked the facility, threatening to derail their efforts. Peter fought valiantly, using his abilities to protect Harry and the crucial equipment. After an intense battle, he successfully neutralized the threat. With the adversaries defeated, Peter and Harry administered the cure to Dr. Connors, hoping it would reverse his condition. Their perseverance paid off, as Dr. Connors began to show signs of recovery, marking a hard-earned victory for the team. Miles Morales takes center stage. He investigates a mysterious signal in Harlem, leading him to a transmitter protected by a force field. Upon examining it, he hears a message from Kraven the Hunter. Miles then chases a Talon drone, staying within its slipstream to download crucial data while avoiding bombs it deploys. After successfully retrieving the information, Miles visits his father's grave, reflecting on his journey and the challenges ahead. Peter Parker is determined to find Dr. Connors. He heads to Connors' home in Astoria, entering through an open bedroom window. Inside, Peter discovers the house in disarray and begins searching for clues. He examines various items, including papers on a filing cabinet, test tubes by the sink, and a picture near the fridge. This picture reveals a hidden mechanism with a musical code. To solve it, Peter finds a child's piano in the living room and presses the house-shaped button, unlocking a secret passage leading to a lab. There, he watches recent CCTV recordings and uncovers more about Connor's situation. As Peter investigates further, hunters arrive outside, leading to a confrontation. After dealing with them, the perspective shifts to Miles Morales, who receives an alert about Martin Lee, setting the stage for the next part of their adventure. Peter Parker, determined to find Dr. Connors, tracked his signal to the sewers of Upper West Side. Navigating through the underground passages, he discovered a hidden Oscorp lab filled with research materials. As he examined the lab, the lizard attacked, leading to a fierce battle. Peter utilized his agility and combat skills, focusing on parrying the lizard's powerful strikes. Despite his efforts, the lizard escaped, prompting Peter to pursue him through the city. The chase culminated in another confrontation, where Peter attempted to administer an antidote. However, Kraven the Hunter intervened, escalating the conflict. After a grueling fight, Peter managed to subdue the lizard, but the encounter left him contemplating the challenges ahead. After a series of intense battles, Peter Parker, feeling the weight of his recent encounters, returns to his home in Astoria to rest. However, his respite is short-lived as a group of hunters tracks him down, threatening his safety. Mary Jane Watson, MJ, present during the intrusion, takes matters into her own hands. Utilizing her stealth and quick thinking, MJ navigates through the house, silently neutralizing the intruders to ensure their safety. Meanwhile, Peter, influenced by an alien entity, becomes increasingly aggressive, leading to a confrontation with the hunters. MJ's intervention helps Peter regain some control, highlighting the strength of their partnership amidst the chaos. Spider-Man wakes up on a rooftop, reading Mary Jane's article about his rampage. Confused and angry, he swings away. Peter visits Harry, who is taking medication for his illness. Harry asks for the suit back, but Peter refuses. Mary Jane confronts Peter about the suit changing him, but he insists it's keeping him alive. Angry, he argues with both of them, denies the article's truth, and storms out. Outside, Peter hears Norman Osborn yelling and finds him struggling to cure Harry. Norman asks about Peter's visit, and Peter assures him Harry will get better. Norman thanks him as Harry watches from outside. Peter Parker, concerned about his friend Miles Morales, learns from Miles's mother, Rio, that he has gone missing. Meanwhile, Miles awakens in a dimly lit chamber, trapped by Kraven the Hunter. Utilizing his agility and intellect, Miles navigates through a series of deadly traps and confronts Kraven's henchmen. His journey leads him to an unexpected encounter with Martin Lee, also known as Mr. Negative. In a climactic battle, Miles confronts Mr. Negative, facing not only physical challenges, but also his own inner demons. Through determination and resilience, Miles overcomes these obstacles, emerging stronger and more resolute in his role as a hero. Peter goes to Martin Lee to find Miles. Martin Lee says that Miles is at Kraven's mansion and that Miles reminds him of Peter. Peter swings to the mansion and fights the hunters. He then interrogates one, and they tell him after he threatens their life. Peter jumps in and is trapped in an unbreakable cage. Kraven believes that Spider-Man wouldn't hold back if he had motivation. He then shows beat-up Miles. Peter escapes the cage and fights Kraven. Peter is very close to strangling Kraven, but then Miles jumps in and saves him. There is a big fight, and Peter removes the symbiote. With the Venom symbiote removed and contained in an Oscorp container by Miles Morales, Peter Parker contacts Kurt Connors, who instructs him to go to Oscorp, where there is a tank that will subdue the symbiote. When asked about his feelings with the symbiote off, Peter explains he is relieved it is over, but ashamed of his behavior. Connors warns Peter to keep the symbiote contained. En route to Oscorp Tower, Peter calls MJ, apologizing for his behavior with the symbiote, and affirming that they can still save Harry Osborn, who has yet to know about the symbiote's whereabouts. When Peter arrives, he is greeted by Harry and tells him they need to destroy the symbiote. Despite Peter's explanation, Harry strikes the symbiote's container with his cane in rage, accusing Peter of refusing to save his life. Its container damaged, the symbiote breaks free and blasts Peter, sending him into a wall. Harry willingly bonds with the symbiote again, but this time around, it transforms him into Venom, a hulking monstrosity with blank, white eyes, a fanged maw with a long tongue, and a warped spider emblem. Peter and Norman Osborn are both horrified at Harry's transformation. The symbiote breaks Harry's cane and prepares to fight Peter. Norman tries to intervene, but Peter shoves him away and gets incapacitated by the symbiote. With a little choice, Norman summons Oscorp's security personnel, ordering them to remove the symbiote off of Harry. Venom rampages its way out of Oscorp, effortlessly eviscerating the security detail. Eventually, Kraven's forces arrive outside Oscorp Tower in a helicopter, drawing Venom's attention. Venom destroys the aircraft and crashes in Times Square, devastating even more hunters before Kraven himself arrives, deeming Venom as his final, greatest hunt. The two engage in a fight, Venom accusing Kraven of causing it to be separated from Peter, and Kraven demanding the symbiote to give him the ultimate death, drenched in fire and blood. Eventually, the symbiote grabs Kraven and throws him onto a billboard. Kraven thanks Venom for the ultimate hunt, before the symbiote bites his head off. Horrified at his actions under the symbiote's influence, Harry retreats to his mother's grave, asking her what he has done. The symbiote speaks to him in Emily's voice, convincing him to help heal the world and spreading its influence all over the world. Peter Parker desperately searched for his friend, Harry Osborn, consumed by the symbiote. Using Harry's work badge, he tracked him to a shipyard teeming with symbiotes. Realizing he needed a weapon, Peter teamed up with Miles Morales to create the Sonic Burst, a device that weakened the creatures. The trail led Peter to a symbiote nest in the subway, which he destroyed after a fierce battle. He then rescued Genki and Rio Morales from a symbiote-infested train. Peter Parker swung toward Harry's apartment, a growing dread in his chest. Inside, he found only a recorder, Harry's
They
voice
say
filled
time
with
heals all
desperation,
wounds.
speaking of power, of
a
something
lot.
inside him taking over.
Every day.
Peter's heart pounded. He
Yeah,
needed to find
I thought it
MJ.
was.
Rushing home, he burst through the door. MJ stood there trembling, her back to him. When she turned, her eyes glowed, inky tendrils slithering over her arms. The symbiote had consumed her. "This isn't you," Peter whispered. MJ let out a monstrous scream. The symbiote surged, twisting her into something grotesque. Scream. She lunged, her claws tearing through the air. Peter barely dodged before being thrown through the window. He had to stop her, but he couldn't hurt her. Their battle raged across the city, a whirlwind of speed and fury. Peter used every trick he had, dodging attacks, activating car alarms to disrupt the symbiote. But Scream only grew stronger, her tendrils shattering buildings. Then, for a split second, he saw it. MJ, buried beneath the monster, afraid. Seizing his chance, Peter struck with precision. The symbiote faltered, letting out a piercing shriek before retreating. MJ collapsed, gasping. Peter knelt beside her, relief washing over him. But he knew the truth. The symbiote was still out there. This fight was far from over. The symbiote invasion ravaged the city, trapping civilians. Spider-Man and Miles Morales teamed up to rescue them. Inside the infested building, Peter confronted a horrifying sight. A symbiote-controlled version of himself. A brutal battle ensued, testing Peter's strength and will. However, as they battle, more symbiotes overwhelmed them. The symbiote forcibly reattaches to Peter, while Mr. Negative rescues Miles. Together, they decide to enter an alternate dimension to save Peter. Inside the dimension, they chase a demon through surreal landscapes, eventually reaching the raft, where they are ambushed by villains from the first game. After surviving the fight, they follow Mr. Negative to Aunt May's house, now a portal to FEAST. Crawling through the symbiote-infested corridors, they reach a gymnasium where Mr. Negative channels his power to weaken the symbiote. During the battle, Miles unlocks the Galvanize ability, helping defeat more symbiotes. With their combined efforts, they finally purge the symbiote from Peter, restoring him. Peter now wields a powerful anti-venom suit, granting him new abilities. Using his anti-venom bomb and tempest moves, he easily defeats waves of symbiotes before facing a symbiote behemoth in a short boss fight. With his new powers, Peter ensures victory, setting the stage for the final confrontation against Venom. Peter Parker is alerted to Harry Osborn's presence at Dr. Kurt Connor's lab in Midtown. Concerned for his friend, Peter heads to the lab to investigate.
Please. Just give me back my son.
We are your son.
Stop, Harry! We can help you!
Please don't.
Please. Save my boy.
Peter Parker is determined to save his friend Harry Osborn, who is under the symbiote's control. Believing that the meteorite that brought the symbiote to Earth holds the key to freeing Harry, Peter sets out to locate it. Peter first responds to a distress call in Midtown, where symbiote creatures are attacking civilians. Utilizing his anti-venom abilities, he neutralizes the threats and ensures the safety of the trapped individuals. Following this, he moves to another location near Central Park, where a bus is under siege by symbiotes. After defeating the attackers, he frees the trapped passengers. Peter then meets with Miles Morales atop a skyscraper in Times Square. Miles, donning a new suit, proposes investigating a nearby symbiote nest for clues about the meteorite's location. The perspective shifts to Miles as he approaches the infected skyscraper. He plants a sonic burst device on the nest's heart, triggering an ambush by symbiote creatures. Miles defends the device until it activates, then interacts with the heart, experiencing a vision that reveals both Haley's kidnapping and the meteorite's location. Returning to Peter's perspective, he follows Miles's lead to a bridge overtaken by symbiote matter. After clearing the area of symbiote creatures, Peter enters the subway tunnels in search of the meteorite. Navigating through the underground passages, he confronts and defeats numerous symbiote adversaries. Eventually, he reaches a large chamber where, after a final battle, he discovers the meteorite. Peter Parker and Miles Morales unite to confront the formidable threat posed by Venom. Their plan involves Peter luring Venom away, allowing Miles and Mary Jane Watson, MJ, to infiltrate the symbiote hive and retrieve a crucial meteorite. Taking control of MJ, players navigate through the symbiote-infested hive. Equipped with an upgraded stun gun, MJ disables symbiote growths and confronts enemies blocking her path. Upon securing the meteorite, she must escape the hive, facing challenges including a confrontation with a formidable symbiote behemoth. Utilizing sonic barrels and her stun gun, MJ successfully overcomes these obstacles and makes her escape. The perspective then shifts to Peter, who engages Venom in a multi-phase battle. Initially, Peter employs his anti-Venom abilities to counter Venom's attacks, avoiding symbiote pools and utilizing elevated platforms for strategic advantage. As the battle intensifies, Venom summons additional symbiote minions, requiring Peter to activate sonic devices to manage the onslaught and create openings for attacks. In the subsequent phase, players control Miles, confronting a now airborne Venom. Miles must dodge projectiles, seize opportunities to hurl them back at Venom, and capitalize on moments to deliver potent attacks. The battle demands agility and strategic use of Miles' unique abilities to subdue the adversary. The final phase amalgamates elements from previous encounters, with Venom employing a combination of ground and aerial assaults. Both Spider-Men must coordinate their efforts, utilizing environmental tools like sonic barrels and their combined powers to ultimately defeat Venom. After Peter and MJ leave Norman and Harry alone, Norman makes a call.
Get the G-Serum ready. ASAP.
Meanwhile,
In this ongoing series, I will be talking with people throughout the city, exploring our new behaviors, new routines,
MJ records her new podcast, The New Normal, before joining Peter in the kitchen, where he's making pancakes for Miles, Genki, Rio, and Haley. Before eating, Peter takes MJ to the garage, revealing an EMF setup, a continuation of his and Harry's dream. A phone alert from the FNSM map interrupts the moment, and Miles appears in his suit. Peter tells him he's semi-retiring, and Miles confidently replies, "I got this." Peter offers advice if needed, and as Miles swings off, Miles welcomes Haley for dinner. Rio urges him to show her his essay, which he shyly does. In his room, Haley notices he's not wearing his suit. Rio introduces them to Albert and his daughter, Cindy.
This is Albert.
Norman visits Otto at the RAFT, demanding to know the identities of the Spider-Men.
You know
Otto
who they are.
cryptically responds,
We all have to experience loss. Even you, Norman.
What are you writing?
The final chapter.